YouTube, and welcome to the Eliminators Archive. I'm Nathan, Eliminator626, and we're going to continue being villainous as we take a look at a deck I like to call Chillin with the Villains. So, just like you saw previously, this is another deck that's trying to use Shift Hades to take advantage, but with a completely different playstyle. And going with the other ink that really has a lot of villains to offer. So this time we're going to be doing Amber Amethyst. So let's take a look at what we've got here. We are looking at both of the purple Maleficents, both of the cheap Dr. Faciliers, Yzma, Jafar, the Queen, and even have a couple copies of Ursula, though she probably won't be there on the board when Shift Hades comes out. And then both Hades. That's a good amount of villains. Now, let's just take a look at what you've got going on here and how this is going to play differently than what our previous villain deck did. So before, where you wanted to quest every single chance you got, this deck, you're only going to quest when it's safe. So, you're looking at Maleficent being able to drop early if your opponent doesn't play something early. Hey, that's a quick 2-war. Pascal, setting up that quick and early evasive so that you can get some quick planks of war in, really good. Simba, giving you that bodyguard, will let you get some early 2-war quick game with Maleficent. It's the only reason he's here. He's also going to be good a little bit later on protecting Yzma. Because between Yzma and our 3-cost Dr. Facilier, this is how we're going to control the top of the deck so that we're seeing the cards that we want to see. Because one issue with this deck is it's got a very high count of non-inkable cards. We have 20 non-inkable cards in this deck. So you're going to have to take really good use of your mulligan to make sure that you've got a good hand, and you need to take advantage of controlling what you're drawing so that you're getting what you need when you need it, as well as using the extra draw power that this deck provides to keep your hand flushed out with a lot of really good cards. Speaking of keeping your hand flushed out, we're also playing the 3-cost Ariel that lets you search for songs. And she's got Singer herself, but we're not going to take advantage of Singer. Both of the songs we're playing are 3-cost songs. She's just here to help us get those cards out of our deck and into our hands so we can play them when we need them. And actually, like, a good portion of our deck is at this 3-cost or less point. This is where we're going to do most of our play. This deck can actually afford to skip a turn or two of inking, just playing out and keeping a nice consistent hand. Because, let's be honest, our 4s aren't necessarily going to be something that we need to play immediately on turn 4. 80s, we might need to wait a turn. Philip, yeah, you want him out there, but you don't need him until you're starting to deal with threats. Jafar is like the only one that I want out there immediately, and he's going to play into what this deck is doing. This deck is trying to keep a nice full hand. So Jafar can get out there and have a lot more power than pretty much anything else that you would normally see at this phase in the game, because this deck has the draw power to keep his hand really full. You're then looking at the Queen, who's giving you extra draw power. Ursula is going to give you a little bit of draw power in the late game are not expecting a lot out of her. She's really only in here because of the fact that that one lore drop can make the difference between winning and losing the game when you're trying to finish your setup. Because your opponent will usually put themselves where it's like, oh, you've got to deal with my whole board. And even if you do, this one guy that I have unexerted can still quest for game. You drop Ursula, you drop them the one lore, you proceed to deal with their board. Suddenly you have stopped them from being in a position to win the game and put yourself in a really good board state. And then, as we've stated, Hades is going to be your main win con. This deck does not want to quest out. You want to build up a very large board of villain characters. You're only going to quest with characters that give you immediate benefit. You can quest with Yzma. You can quest with Pascal. Your 2-cost Dr. Facilier, you're kind of okay with him dying because you're going to be using him as a challenger to help get rid of. Jafar, I went with this one because, as opposed to the other challenger one, you're going to have higher power with this one and at all times. So even when you hit hard on offense, you're hitting just as hard defensively. So this deck is pumping out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 additional villains over the shift Hades at 4 copies, and then the 2 more copies of Ursula. So you're going to have a lot of villains out when you shift into Hades. And so you will shift into him, and just when you shift into Hades, you should be putting that turn huge numbers on the board. You should be able to shift into Hades, quest with Hades, and Hades will be questing for 6, 7 lore. And then you could just decide, okay, now that he did that, let's go ahead and quest out with the rest. That might be enough to just win you the game right there. If it's not, you put your opponent in a position where it's like, hey, heal my board or I'll win next turn. And even if they focus down Hades to get rid of that huge lore gain that he has, you've still got a wide board that can do a lot of, here's an additional 1, here's an additional 2. Like, most of this deck is quest for 1. So it's very slow going up the chain. But you're going to be setting up nice, big, wide boards that are all going to benefit Hades. Then you've got, for your 2 songs, part of your world, so you get back those valuable pieces that may have been hit early through your opponent's removal options, or you just had to quest to do something, or you just had to swing into this high value target to get rid of it. Okay, well, you get your guy back. And then your bread and butter of this deck is friends on the other side. You will get so much benefit every single time you play this card. And it's going to be even more amazing when you play this card while the 3-cost Dr. Facilier is out. Because not only are you going to draw 2 cards, once you're done drawing those 2 cards, you're going to look at the top 2 cards of your deck. Put one of them on the top and one of them on the bottom. You immediately control your entire next turn. And you can be doing that on turn 4 to set yourself up for a really good turn 5 play. Or you might be doing this on turn 5 to make sure that you can drop Hades on 6. So, really, really, really good. Now, Ursula, she is just here to give you that potential turn 7, that potential of, hey, let's just upset the current conditions. That she is just here to really just rock the boat. But you drop her, she's now a huge defensive body that quests for 3. So when she's on board, she's furthering that, okay, next turn we go into Hades and here's massive numbers. And since you're going to be playing so defensively, that taking away of your opponent's lore so that you can catch up is going to work very well with this deck. And if you look at the number of cards that are going to draw you cards, put cards back into your hand, you can see how easy it's going to be to keep Jafar at very high power. Now, realistic numbers, he's probably going to sit at 5 power. But y'all have been playing and watching this game get played. How often is a deck that's sitting at, once you get to 5-6 ink, how often is that deck sitting with 5 cards in hand? Not many, if ever. You need to be playing Amethyst if you want to have a hand size like that. And so he is a key piece of showing you that this is what this deck does, and this is one of the benefits for doing what this deck does. So, that's Chillin with the Villains. It's going to be a very simple to use deck. Just sit back and wait until you have a board that your opponent can't break, and either go for game all at once or have it set up that you're going to get game over the course of 2 turns. And no matter what you do, you want to make sure that you are setting up a huge benefit of gaining that card advantage. Because that card advantage is going to give you options to allow yourself to have that better setup than your opponent. Now, what this deck has to worry about your opponent doing is playing Be Prepared. Because you're not going to be gaining a lot of lore with this deck early. You are trying to set up a large board. If your opponent doesn't Be Prepared, there goes your large board. Thankfully, this deck can recover from it, but if your opponent does Be Prepared, then you need to bounce back from that faster than your opponent can reestablish. And you can trust and believe any person who's going to be playing a deck that's doing Be Prepared is playing a minimum of 2 copies. So you need to be able to not only reestablish that board and get that presence, you need to keep refilling your hand and be ready to do it again. Because I can guarantee any deck that pulls it off against you once is going to be able to pull it off against you twice. Some of these decks are going to pull it off all the way up to 4 times. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone is being really cheeky and doing a Emerald Ruby deck so that they can do it even more times by playing action recursion. So, this is what we have. If you want to modify this deck further to increase more of that draw power, so really the only thing you can do is up your number of songs and bring in the Ursula's Shell Necklace, I believe is the name of it. The one that lets you pay 1 when you play a song to draw a card. The only other song that I would really want to play in this deck is Be Our Guest. With that, you could could see reflections as well. I could see you playing reflections as well. But the whole point is going to be setting it up so that your draw power is going to be benefited. If I were to go that route, though, I would have to drop Ursula herself. And at that point, I would probably get rid of Simba. But I kind of like it how I have it here. That's just some options if you want to expand and try something a little bit different. So, that's Chillin with the Villains. If you like this deck, please like and subscribe. And if you have any ideas for future content, please put it down in the comments below. Thank you. Have a good day. Hey.
Hey, what's up?
So I just